They left her tied between two trees until a quiet rancher rode in, looked those men in the eye and said, "Touch her again, and you'll answer to me." What happened next changed both their lives forever. Redstone Valley always woke slowly, as if the land itself wanted to stretch before letting the day truly begin. Morning sunlight poured over the plains in warm sheets of gold, brushing against the tall grasses that swayed with a gentle, unhurried rhythm. Horses nickered behind wooden fences. Dust drifted lazily through the air, and the sound of distant hammering came from small ranches scattered across the valley floor. Life here followed a steady heartbeat, calm, familiar, and deeply rooted in community. For Maya Tallfeather, that rhythm was comforting. She grew up knowing everyone by name: the baker who saved her fresh rolls from the morning batch, the ranch wives who asked about her mother's health, the children who loved to watch her craft demonstrations. The valley wasn't just her home, it was the place that shaped her strength and taught her responsibility. And every morning, she carried that sense of purpose with her as she loaded her satchel with handmade goods from her family's shop: woven bands, carved trinkets, small painted ornaments that tourists often adored. Maya tied her dark hair back, adjusted the strap on her shoulder, and took a deep breath of the warm summer air. She felt ready to help, ready to work, ready to be another steady thread in the valley's fabric. She felt proud of her heritage, proud of her family's craft, and proud that even in a world changing around them, she could still carry forward the traditions she loved. Instead of taking the main road into town, Maya chose the back trail. She always preferred it. It cut through patches of tall grass, past weathered stones she recognized from childhood adventures, and along a quiet stream where she often paused to think. The route was familiar, peaceful, and gave her a moment to simply breathe and enjoy her thoughts. The day was warm but gentle. As she walked the trail, she let her eyes travel across the horizon. She thought about her family, about her hope to someday open a larger craft shop, and about the importance of standing independently even when things grew difficult. She liked that the trail gave her space to reflect. She felt strong out here, strong and steady, like the roots of the valley oaks. But today, something felt slightly different. She couldn't place the feeling at first. It was like a faint shift in the wind, a subtle reminder that not every path stayed peaceful forever. As she neared a bend between two large trees, the quiet broke. A group of unfamiliar men stepped out from behind a wagon parked crookedly across the path. Travelers, loud, restless ones, judging by their demeanor. They looked her over in a way that felt more teasing than threatening, but still unwelcome. "Well now," one of them chuckled, "look what wandered onto our little trail." Another whistled mockingly, nudging his friend. "Out here all alone?" Maya kept her posture steady. She'd handled rude travelers before. "I'm just passing through," she said calmly, her voice even. "If you move your wagon, I'll continue on my way." Her politeness only made them laugh harder. They circled closer, not touching her, but crowding her, teasing her as if she were part of a game only they found amusing. Before she knew it, they tugged lightly at her wrists and looped them harmlessly between the two tree trunks, tying them just high enough to keep her stuck in place. Not tightly enough to hurt, but firmly enough to trap her. "There," one said with a satisfied grin. "You can stay put a while. We don't mean anything bad, darling. Just a bit of fun." It was humiliating, but Maya refused to show fear. Her breathing remained steady, her eyes focused. She knew they weren't trying to truly harm her, just trying to unsettle her, and she wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. Even tied between the trees, she held on to her dignity, calm, composed, and strong. Eventually, the travelers grew bored of their own joke. They climbed back onto their wagon, mumbling about grabbing supplies from the next town. Maya watched them disappear down the trail, leaving her alone with the wind rustling through the leaves. She tested the knots. Not painful, just restrictive. She could wait. Someone was bound to come by, and someone did. Across the valley, Caleb Hartwell guided his horse toward home after checking on the cattle scattered across his family ranch's western fields. Caleb was known for his steady nature. Quiet, observant, the kind of man who noticed a loose fence before anyone else did. He loved the valley deeply, not just for its beauty, but for the people he cared about within it. Earlier that afternoon, he had heard faint echoes in the distance, Raised voices, maybe laughter. He shrugged it off at the time. Travelers often came through, and noise wasn't unusual, but as he approached the point in the trail where he usually turned home, something nudged at him. A feeling. A whisper in his gut, telling him the day wasn't as calm as it looked. He slowed his horse, scanning the horizon. The back trail came into view, the same path Maya had taken. Caleb rarely traveled it, but today he felt drawn toward it, as if something unspoken was asking him to look closer. He tugged gently on the reins, guiding his horse down the narrow side path. The air seemed different here, quieter. Still, he kept going, and then he saw her. At first, it was only the shape of someone standing between two trees. Then he noticed the stillness of her posture, the way her arms were held unnaturally. His heart jumped. Maya. She looked tired but unafraid, her chin lifted with quiet resolve, even in such an uncomfortable position. Caleb's breath caught, and the reins slipped slightly through his fingers. Something had happened here. Something wrong. The chapter ends with him staring in shock, his horse stopping beneath him and the weight of the moment settling like a storm about to break. Caleb dismounted almost before his horse had fully stopped, landing with a thud that sent dust rising around his boots. The sight of Maya, held between the two trees, struck him harder than he expected. Her wrists were tied in a way that didn't seem intended to hurt her, yet it was humiliating all the same. She stood with her spine straight, her chin slightly lifted, looking more proud than defeated, which only deepened the twist in his chest. "Maya?" Caleb called gently as he stepped closer. He didn't want to startle her, and yet his voice carried more urgency than he intended. Relief flickered across her face, subtle but unmistakable. "Caleb," she answered, her tone steady even though he could hear the exhaustion beneath it. "I'm all right. It's just been a long afternoon." He reached her and immediately examined the knot. The rope wasn't digging into her skin, but it held her firmly enough that she couldn't break free without help. He worked at it carefully, making sure not to tug too hard. Maya watched him quietly, breathing slowly, deliberately maintaining her composure. "What happened?" he asked without looking up. His fingers kept moving, loosening the knot with a patience that matched the worry growing behind his eyes. "Travelers," she said simply. "They were messing around. Thought it was funny." Caleb exhaled through his nose, a low sound that wasn't quite anger but something very close. The knot finally gave way, and he eased her hands free. As soon as her arms dropped, he gently supported her wrists, turning them slightly to check if she was hurt. The touch was careful, almost reverent, as though he feared even the slightest movement might cause discomfort. "I'm fine," she assured him, "really. You shouldn't have had to deal with that," he murmured. Her wrists were only a little red, nothing serious, but the sight of even that small mark made something protective rise in him. He didn't say anything else, but the silence spoke clearly. He let go of her hands slowly, as if making sure she was steady before stepping back. "Do you need water?" he asked. "Maybe just a little." He grabbed his canteen from his horse and handed it to her. Maya drank gratefully, closing her eyes for a brief moment as the cool water touched her lips. When she handed the canteen back, her hand brushed his lightly, an accidental touch, but one that made Caleb still for a heartbeat before he slipped the canteen back onto his saddle. She regained her posture, smoothing her hair, adjusting the strap of her satchel, as though trying to erase the frustration of the last hour. And yet, even if she stood tall, he could see the tremble of weariness in her fingers. Caleb opened his mouth to speak, but a distant rumble of wheels on dirt interrupted him. He turned sharply. A wagon was rolling back toward them. The same wagon. Judging from the uneven wheels and the sloppy paint job, Maya stiffened, standing a little closer to him without even realizing it. The wagon creaked to a stop a few yards away. The same group of travelers hopped down casually, waving like they had stumbled upon old friends rather than the people they had just humiliated. "Well, look at that," one of them said with a grin. "The lady's been rescued." Another elbowed his friend. "See? All just a bit of fun. No harm done." Caleb positioned himself slightly in front of Maya without even thinking. He wasn't trying to hide her, but simply to make it clear where he stood. His voice was steady, calm, but unmistakably firm. "That isn't what fun looks like," he said. "You crossed a line." The men blinked in surprise, not used to being challenged by anyone outside their own rowdy circles. They snickered, exchanging glances as if silently daring one another to push the situation further. The tallest of them shrugged. "We didn't hurt her. You humiliated her," Caleb replied. "And that's enough." For a moment, there was only the rustle of the wind through the trees. The men didn't seem to grasp the seriousness in his tone, at least, not at first. Then the leader's smile faded slightly. He took a step forward, but Caleb didn't budge. His posture stayed relaxed but unyielding, the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to make a point. "If you're smart," Caleb continued, "you'll move along, and you won't bother her again." The way he said it wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive, wasn't anything more than a simple truth. But something in his eyes made even the most reckless among the group shift, uncomfortably. The leader scoffed, but it was weaker this time. "Whatever you say, rancher, we're leaving anyway." With that, they climbed back onto their wagon. The wheels turned, kicking up dust as they headed down the trail in the opposite direction. Not one of them looked back. Caleb watched until the wagon disappeared completely. Only then did he let out a slow breath, turning back to Maya. She was still standing tall, but her shoulders sagged just slightly as tension drained from her. "Thank you," she said softly. "You shouldn't have had to go through that alone." He glanced at her satchel. "Were you headed to town?" "I was," she replied, "but I think I'd like to stop for a moment." He nodded. "Come with me. You can rest at the ranch. My family will be glad to help." She hesitated only a moment before agreeing. The back trail felt different now, no longer peaceful, at least not today. And Caleb's presence felt like a solid place to land, a temporary shelter from the unsettling encounter. He helped her onto his horse gently, ensuring she was balanced before swinging up behind her. The warmth of the afternoon breeze mixed with the faint scent of cedar from the surrounding trees. They rode slowly, giving her time to breathe and recover. Her posture relaxed little by little, her heartbeat easing with every step the horse took. They reached the Hartwell Ranch just as the sunlight began to soften. The ranch house stood sturdy and welcoming, with tall windows and a porch that wrapped around the front. Chickens clucked near the barn, and 2 dogs lifted their heads from where they lay napping in the shade. Caleb's mother, a woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, stepped out onto the porch. "Caleb, you're back early. Oh!" Her eyes widened the moment she saw Maya. "Dear, are you all right?" Maya offered a polite smile. "I'm fine, ma'am. Just a small incident on the trail." His mother ushered her inside before Maya could protest further. Caleb followed, watching carefully as Maya sat on a cushioned bench near the hearth. His mother brought her a warm cup of tea, fussing just enough to show care, but not enough to overwhelm her. "Thank you," Maya murmured again, looking from the cup to Caleb. His mother excused herself to fetch some ointment for Maya's wrists, leaving the 2 of them alone for a moment. The room was warm, lit by sunlight pouring through the curtains. It felt safe, steady, everything Maya needed after the harshness of earlier. Caleb leaned against the wall near her, not too close, not too distant. "If you need anything," he said quietly, "anything at all, you just ask." She studied him for a moment. There was something reassuring in the way he spoke, as though he wasn't offering out of obligation but out of genuine care. "I appreciate that," she said, truly. He nodded, but he didn't leave. He simply stayed nearby, a steady presence. Maya relaxed into the quiet, sipping her tea, letting herself feel the safety of the ranch and the sincerity of the man who brought her there. That evening, after she had rested and regained her strength, Caleb walked her out to the porch so she could breathe the cool dusk air. The sky had turned orange and lavender, and fireflies flickered near the fence line. Maya looked out over the fields, then at Caleb. "I didn't think today would end like this." "Neither did I," he said honestly. The moment felt strange and gentle. 2 people who knew each other only through passing interactions, now sharing a quiet, meaningful silence. When it was time to escort her home, she walked beside him with a steadiness that returned more fully with every step. The path felt safer now, lit by the soft glow of lantern light and the calm presence beside her. And though neither of them said it aloud, Both felt something shift that evening, something unspoken, something warm beginning to take shape. Far behind them, the valley wind whispered through the trees, carrying away the last fragments of the trouble that had changed the course of their day, and perhaps the course of something much bigger. The next morning arrived quietly, as if the valley itself wanted to offer Maya a gentler beginning after the turmoil of the day before. Soft light spilled across the Hartwell ranch, slipping through the curtains of the guest room where she rested. For a moment, Maya lay still, listening to the distant sound of roosters and the murmur of ranch hands starting their chores. She felt safer than she expected she would. The scent of fresh bread drifted in faintly from the kitchen, warm and comforting. When she finally rose and stepped outside, Caleb was already in the yard, checking a fence post near the barn. He turned when he heard the door, offering her a small smile, one that carried both relief and welcome. "Morning," he said. "Did you sleep all right?" "Better than I thought I would," she answered honestly. "Your home is peaceful." "It's the valley," he said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "It takes care of its people if you let it." Minutes later, his mother insisted Maya have breakfast with them. The kitchen was filled with sunlight and the soft chatter of family. Caleb mostly listened while his mother asked Maya questions about her shop and her craft work. Maya felt the tension she carried melt away little by little. This kind of warmth, this simple kindness, felt like a balm. After breakfast, Maya stepped outside again, needing a moment to herself. She looked over the field stretching in all directions, the tall grass rippling like waves. She let out a slow breath and felt an unexpected calm. But as she turned, she found Caleb approaching her with a relaxed stride. "I'm heading out to check the east pasture," he said. "If you're feeling up to it, would you like to come along? Fresh air might help." "I'd like that," she said. They saddled 2 horses, and Maya felt more like herself when she held the reins. Riding always reminded her of childhood adventures and long afternoons racing through the valley with her cousins. Caleb watched her mount with a small look of admiration that he didn't comment on. They rode at a comfortable pace. The valley sprawled around them, painted in earthy browns, greens, and golds. Birds glided overhead, dipping and soaring as the horses' hooves thudded rhythmically against the dirt. The sun was warm but not harsh, and the ride gave Maya a sense of quiet renewal. Caleb glanced back at her occasionally, not to check on her like she needed protection, but simply because he enjoyed having her there. Eventually, he slowed his horse beside hers. "You didn't deserve anything that happened yesterday," he said gently. "I keep thinking about it." She paused before responding. "I wasn't afraid of them hurting me, but it did make me feel small, like they were stripping away my dignity just because they could." She took a slow breath. "That feeling stays with you even after it's over." Caleb nodded, his expression thoughtful. "You stood your ground. Even tied up, you didn't let them scare you." "That's because I couldn't afford to let them," she said. "If I show fear, they win." "You don't owe them anything," Caleb said softly, "or anyone who tries to belittle you." The sincerity in his voice surprised her. It warmed something inside her chest, not heavily, but with a gentle weight that settled there. She looked toward the horizon as they continued riding. As they reached the east pasture, Caleb pointed out a small break in the fence. "Coyotes slipped through here last week. Been meaning to fix it." He dismounted to inspect it, and without hesitation, Maya joined him. She kneeled beside him, holding the post steady while he hammered the nails. "You don't have to help," he said. "I want to," she replied. "My hands need to stay busy. Stillness makes me overthink." He understood that feeling all too well. When the fence was secure, they walked a short distance to a small hill overlooking the valley. The grass there swayed calmly, brushing at their boots. Caleb found a spot and sat, motioning for her to do the same. They watched the view in companionable silence. After a while, he spoke again. "You know, when I was younger, I used to sit up here whenever I felt lost. This place, it always reminded me that the world is bigger than whatever trouble I'm facing." Maya hugged her knees lightly. "I can see why. Everything looks so peaceful from here." "Peaceful doesn't mean perfect," he said, glancing at her, "but it's something worth fighting for." Maya watched the horizon, then looked back at him, "Thank you, Caleb. For yesterday, for today, for everything." "You don't owe me thanks," he said. "Anyone decent would have helped." "Maybe," she said softly, "but you didn't hesitate." Before he could respond, a rustling noise rose from the tall grass below. Both of them stiffened slightly. Caleb stood and moved closer to the edge of the hill, scanning the field. It wasn't danger, just a herd of deer moving quietly along the tree line. Still, the moment reminded them both that the valley could shift without warning. They headed back to the ranch before noon, arriving to find Caleb's father preparing tools for the afternoon. He greeted Maya warmly, asking about her family and offering help if she ever needed anything. The Hartwell family's sincerity made her feel grounded again, as though she'd become part of something larger than her own worries. Maya spent part of the afternoon in the barn, helping Caleb tend to the horses. They worked well together, easily, without awkwardness. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they simply moved in quiet harmony. She brushed the horses with care, humming softly under her breath. Caleb listened from where he stood repairing a bridle, appreciating the gentle sound, even if he didn't say it aloud. Later, Caleb walked her back toward her family's home. The dirt path felt familiar again, though echoes of the previous day still lingered faintly, like shadows. The sky was bright and clear, wind carrying the scent of warm earth and pine. The moment felt softer than yesterday's return trip, as if the valley was trying to reassure her. "You know," Caleb said as they walked, "you don't have to pretend you're fine if you're not." She glanced at him with a small smile. "I'm not pretending. Not anymore, at least." "Good," he said. "You carry a lot on your shoulders. People don't always notice that because you're strong. But even strong people deserve support." She looked down briefly at the ground, then up at him again. "I appreciate your kindness. It means more than you think." He nodded once, but his eyes held hers a second longer before he looked ahead again. When they reached her home, her mother came out immediately, gathering her into a gentle embrace. Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. She introduced Caleb, and her mother thanked him for watching over her. Caleb remained humble, insisting that he only did what anyone should. After her mother returned inside, Maya lingered with Caleb near the low wooden fence. The sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow across the valley. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm glad you came by yesterday," she said quietly. "I don't know how long I would have had to wait if you hadn't." "I'm glad I followed that trail," he replied. "Something told me I needed to." She looked at him for a long moment, the same gentle feeling from their ride returning again. A sense of safety, of connection. "Good night, Caleb," she said softly. "Good night, Maya," he replied. She watched him walk away, his figure growing smaller against the sunset-lit horizon. And for the first time since the incident, she felt the fear inside her loosen completely. The valley felt like home again. And the warmth she felt whenever Caleb spoke to her, or simply stood near her, was something she couldn't ignore, even if she wasn't ready to name it yet. As the last light faded from the sky, Maya stepped inside her home with a quieter heart and a clearer mind, unaware that the coming days would pull her and Caleb even closer, weaving their paths together in ways neither of them expected. The days following Maya's return home moved slowly, as if the valley sensed a storm building somewhere just beyond the ridge. The sun rose each morning with the same warm glow, and yet, beneath the beauty, a quiet tension lingered. Maya woke early to help her mother with chores, trying to slip back into her normal rhythm. But the memory of that humiliating moment between the two trees still brushed the back of her mind whenever she walked down the road alone. Despite her attempts to shake it off, she found her steps unconsciously slowing whenever she approached familiar bends in the trail. She glanced over her shoulder more often. She held her satchel a little closer. The valley that had always felt like a sanctuary now felt shifted, not dangerous, but watchful. The knowledge that trouble had found her once made her wonder if it might find her again. One constant, though, was Caleb. He stopped by every morning, always with some gentle excuse, checking the fence near her home, bringing fresh eggs from the ranch, asking if her mother needed help carrying supplies from town. Maya knew he could have sent any ranch hand to do those tasks, but he came himself, without fail, always offering a steady smile and a quiet reassurance that made her shoulders ease every time he appeared. One afternoon, as she sat outside carving small wooden charms for the shop, Caleb approached with that familiar measured stride. His posture was relaxed but alert, as if ready to shift into action at a moment's notice. She had come to know his rhythms, the way he paused before speaking, the way he looked at her hands when she worked, as though appreciating the craft but also checking for any sign she wasn't doing well. Today, he seemed more thoughtful than usual. "I saw the travelers again," he said once he reached her. "They were near the tavern, seemed unsettled." Maya's hands stilled on the carving for just a heartbeat. Unsettled. How? Like they were waiting for something. Whispering. Watching the road. He studied her expression carefully. "I don't want to worry you, but I thought you should know." Her breath came a little slower as she set aside the charm. "Do you think they're planning something?" "I don't know," Caleb said. "But I don't want you walking alone for a while. I can escort you to town, or someone from the ranch can." She wanted to say she didn't need an escort, that she was perfectly capable of protecting herself, but the memory of their mocking laughter pressed too insistently at the edges of her bravery. She nodded once. "All right." Caleb reached out briefly, touching her forearm in silent reassurance before withdrawing again. "You're strong, Maya, but no one should face trouble alone." She didn't reply right away. Instead, she looked toward the horizon, where the grass swayed in golden waves. "Strength doesn't mean much when others decide to misuse theirs," she murmured. "That's exactly why a community stands together," Caleb said gently. True to his word, he began accompanying Maya on her deliveries. They walked or rode together through the valley's winding paths, encountering neighbors who greeted them warmly. The rhythm of their companionship grew natural, comfortable. They shared stories about childhood mischief, discussed the best places to watch the sunset, teased each other about small habits they'd noticed. Slowly, the valley began to feel familiar again, its shadows lifting piece by piece. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and painted the sky in hues of rose and amber, Caleb walked Maya home again. They paused at her fence, the air warm and still, fireflies beginning to blink between the tall grass. Maya looked toward the darker part of the valley, the direction of the tavern, and her voice grew quiet. "Do you think they'll leave soon?" she asked. "They aren't the kind to stay put for long," he said. "But something tells me they're not finished here." Before she could ask what he meant, a distant shout cracked through the quiet evening. Caleb turned immediately, instincts sharp. Another shout followed, closer this time. Maya's breath caught as the sound of boots pounding on dirt echoed down the road. Caleb stepped forward protectively, his posture shifting, shoulders squared. "Behind me," he said softly. The shout came again, clearer. 3 figures emerged from the dusk, the travelers. The same men who had laughed as they tied Maya between the trees. But now, they carried themselves with a heavier, more determined energy. Their earlier confidence had simmered into frustration, maybe even embarrassment, after Caleb's warning. And that embarrassment had hardened into something uglier. "Well, look who we found," the leader said as they approached. "The rancher and his little friend." Maya felt her pulse quicken, but she didn't step back. Caleb moved only slightly to shield her without blocking her view. "What do you want?" Caleb asked, voice steady. "You embarrassed us," one of them muttered. "Made us look weak." Caleb didn't move. "You did that yourselves," the leader scoffed. "We're not here to fight, just to finish our business with her." Maya lifted her chin, her voice clear even though her heartbeat echoed in her ears. "There's no business left between us." "That's not for you to decide," the man snapped. Before the situation could escalate, lanterns flickered on across the nearby house. Maya's mother stepped onto the porch, eyes widening at the sight. At the same moment, 2 neighbors from across the road approached, drawn by the raised voices. And farther down the path, a ranch hand from the Hartwell Ranch appeared, having followed Caleb out of concern. The travelers slowed, glancing uneasily at the growing presence around them. Caleb didn't look away from them, but he raised his voice enough for those nearby to hear. "Maya doesn't stand alone," he said. "This valley protects its own." The leader's bravado faltered. Another man muttered something under his breath. Their confidence cracked as more people stepped forward. Neighbors, ranch workers, townsfolk drawn by the commotion, all watching, ready to intervene if things took a darker turn. Maya took a step forward then, no longer behind Caleb but beside him. Her voice carried strength she had earned through fear and recovery. "You don't belong here," she said. "And whatever you think you can control, you can't. Not here, not with us." Her bravery surprised even herself. The men stared at her, then at the expanding circle of residents. The weight of the valley's unity pressed against them like an invisible wall, one they couldn't shove aside. "Come on," one of them muttered. "This isn't worth it." The leader hesitated, glaring at Caleb one last time. But it was a hollow glare, one stripped of power. "Fine," he spat. "We're leaving this miserable place." The group turned and retreated into the dusk, their figures fading toward the tavern road, toward their wagon, toward the exit from Redstone Valley. Their voices grew faint, swallowed by the wind and the rustling grass. Silence settled over the path. The neighbors slowly dispersed, offering reassuring nods and kind glances. Maya's mother called out to check on her, and Maya answered that she was fine. Truly fine. When the last lantern dimmed and only the two of them remained near the fence, Maya let out a long, trembling breath. Caleb watched her carefully, searching her face for any sign of fear or distress. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded softly. "I am now." "You were brave," he said, his tone full of quiet admiration. "Braver than most." "Not alone," she whispered. "I could only speak because I knew you were there." Caleb looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen before. Something warm, something meaningful, something that held gratitude and admiration and a gentle, growing affection he hadn't yet put into words. "You're never alone in this valley," he said. Maya looked down for a moment, then met his eyes again. "I know." The wind carried the last echoes of the departing wagon, fading into nothing. The valley, once tense and uncertain, now felt open again, peaceful under the blanket of night. As they stood together beneath the rising stars, the fear that once clung to Maya dissolved quietly, replaced by something steadier, something hopeful, something that felt a lot like a beginning. The next morning arrived softer than any before it, as though the valley wanted to reassure Maya that the worst had passed. The sunlight trickled through her curtains in warm slants, carrying the faint scent of dew and wild grass. She rose slowly, her muscles still carrying the memory of tension, but easing more with each stretch. The events of last night replayed quietly in her mind. The confrontation, the way the community had stepped forward, and the image that lingered most vividly of all. Caleb standing beside her, not in front of her, not shielding her, but supporting her with a steady presence she could lean on without feeling weak. She stepped outside to find the valley shimmering with early morning light, the air crisp with a hint of lingering night chill. Birds hopped along the fence posts, chirping in lively bursts. She had always loved the valley mornings, but today she appreciated them with a deeper gratitude, feeling the peace settle inside her. As she walked toward the small garden behind her home, she saw Caleb approaching from the main road. His figure was instantly recognizable. The easy gait, the slight tilt of his hat to block the sun, the familiar firmness of his shoulders. When he reached the gate, he lifted his hand in greeting. "Morning, Maya," he said. "Thought I'd stop by, see how you were doing?" She smiled, the kind of smile that carried sincerity without effort. "I'm all right. Better than all right, actually. It feels like my breaths are coming easier today." "That's good," he replied. "We all need a day like that." They chatted for a moment before he asked if she'd like to walk with him. She agreed, and they set off down the familiar road, the quiet morning wrapping around them like a warm blanket. The path felt different now. Still the same winding dirt road between pastures and tall grass, but free of the tension and fear that had shadowed her steps in recent days. As they walked, Caleb glanced at her with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about something," he said. "What is it?" "Yesterday, seeing you stand up to them like that. I don't think I've ever seen anyone speak with that kind of courage." Maya looked down briefly, pushing a loose wisp of hair behind her ear. "I wasn't sure I could. I was shaking on the inside, to be honest." "That doesn't make the courage any less real," he said. "Courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about speaking anyway." She considered his words for a moment, then nodded softly. "Maybe so, but I don't think I would have been able to speak if you weren't there." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he slowed his pace, turning to face her fully. "Maya, you give yourself too little credit. I only stood beside you. You're the one who stood tall." His voice held no dramatics, no attempt at flattery, just truth. She held his gaze, feeling something shift in the air between them, something quiet but powerful. They walked on again, the silence now filled with a comfortable warmth. When they reached the small hill overlooking the valley, the same hill they had visited a few days before, Caleb paused and nodded toward the top. "Want to sit for a while?" "Yes," she said. "I do." The climb was short, but the view at the top was breathtaking. The valley spread out beneath them in a tapestry of greens, browns, and soft golden hues. The wind brushed at their clothes and carried the scent of warmed earth and sun-touched grass. It felt like a place meant for reflection, for healing, for beginnings. They sat side by side, close enough to feel each other's presence, but not close enough to touch. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, letting the peace wash over her. "It's strange," she said quietly, her gaze drifting across the landscape, "that something so awful could lead me here." Caleb looked at her profile, the calm strength in her expression, the resilience she carried so naturally. "Life does that sometimes," he said. "Puts us through something difficult so we end up where we're meant to be." She turned toward him. "Do you really believe that?" "I believe," he said slowly, "that the valley would feel pretty empty if I hadn't ridden down that trail that day." Maya felt her breath catch gently, not in fear, but in the soft surprise of hearing something she didn't realize she needed. She looked back at the valley to steady herself, her heart warming at his words. They stayed on the hill for a while, simply talking. Maya shared stories of her childhood, of learning to carve wood beside her father's workshop. Caleb told her about the first horse he ever raised on his own, the mistakes he'd made, the pride he felt when it finally trusted him enough to approach without hesitation. There was no rush, no urgency, just two people who had found comfort in each other. Later that afternoon, they rode to her family's shop together. Maya had been thinking for days about expanding the shop, fixing some of the worn shelves, maybe even adding a small display corner for new crafts she'd been wanting to try. Caleb listened attentively as she explained her vision. "You should do it," he said with conviction. "You have the talent, and the town loves your work. I can help build the shelves if you want." Maya laughed softly. "You make it sound easy." "It is if we're doing it together." That simple sentence made her smile wider than she had in days. They spent the next several hours cleaning and sorting through boxes, carrying old planks to the back, measuring the space for the new shelves Caleb promised to help build. They worked side by side without needing to talk much. The silence between them never felt empty. It felt natural, like their breaths were syncing with the rhythm of the valley. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the shop floor, Caleb paused beside her. She had a streak of sawdust across her cheek, and he smiled gently as he reached for a cloth. "Hold still," he said. Without thinking, she tilted her face slightly toward him. He wiped the sawdust away with care, not hurrying, his touch barely a whisper. When he pulled his hand back, their eyes met. Something unspoken shimmered between them, warm, soft, and promising. "Maya," he said quietly, as though tasting her name with a new kind of reverence. "I meant what I said. You're not alone. Not now. Not ever." Her breath trembled just slightly. "I know." Neither of them reached for anything more they didn't need to. The moment itself held more tender truth than any grand declaration could. As they stepped outside the shop, the sky blazed with reds, oranges, and pinks. One of those sunsets that made the valley look touched by fire and magic. Caleb walked her home, the same way he had so many times now, but today felt different. There was a sense of completion, of calm, settling into the spaces that once held fear. When they reached her home, she didn't say goodbye right away. She stood with him at the gate, the cool evening breeze brushing across her cheeks. "You've changed the way I see things," she said softly. "You've changed the way I see myself." Caleb swallowed gently, his voice steady when he replied, "You've done the same for me." The quiet lingered between them again, heavy, sweet, full of depth. Then Maya smiled, a small, genuine smile that held gratitude and affection. "Good night, Caleb," he smiled back. "Good night, Maya." As he walked away, his silhouette fading into the twilight, Maya placed her hand on her heart, feeling the warmth there. A warmth she knew was not just safety or relief, but something she was ready to welcome, something beginning, something real. She stepped inside her home, and for the first time since the travelers left the valley, she felt completely restored. The fear had left her body, and in its place was courage, hope, and a growing connection she couldn't yet name but understood deeply. The valley, calm under the night sky, felt like it had opened a new chapter for both of them, and neither had any intention of turning back. In the end, Maya and Caleb's journey showed that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to stand tall even when the world tries to shrink you. It's finding strength in yourself and comfort in the people who choose to stand beside you. Their story reminds us that even in the rough, unpredictable heart of the Wild West, love can bloom in the most unexpected moments, turning danger into destiny and strangers into soulmates. If stories like this warm your heart and keep you wanting more, make sure to hit subscribe to Wild West Love Chronicles. Don't miss the next gripping tale of danger, devotion, and the unforgettable romances that shape the untamed frontier. Your next favorite love story is already on the horizon.